We are iConnections, and it's time to talk about change. To work together and rebalance our global systems. To create a more equitable world for everyone. To celebrate women and their achievements. Acknowledge their trials and their triumphs. To challenge biases and recognize that the leadership of women is essential. We choose to invest in our future because equality is non-negotiable for investment. And change emerges from leadership. We must overcome discrimination, challenge gender inequality, and balance our responsibilities.
Every challenge comes with a choice.
I choose to challenge.
I choose to challenge.
We choose to challenge.
Welcome to today's Fireside Chat between Shelley Rosensweig and Reena Lalji. This session is sponsored by EisnerAmper, one of the largest accounting firms in the US with over 2,000 employees across the country. This chat is a fantastic opportunity to hear from two inspiring leaders from our industry. Reena Lalji is the General Counsel for Wilshire. With over 20 years of legal, compliance, and business experience focused on financial services and investment management, Reena has a deep understanding of what it really means to choose to challenge. Interviewing Reena is Shelley Rosensweig, a partner in the investment management and private equity practice group in the New York office of Haynes and Boone, where she structures and organizes domestic and offshore private investment funds. I will now turn it over to Shelley to begin our discussion.
So Reena, thank you so much for joining us today. I thought that we could begin with a little synopsis of your background and how you found your way to Wilshire.
Sure, I'm happy to. And thank you, Shelley, for the opportunity to join you in this. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you live one day, and maybe we'll be invited back to do it live. So I have been practicing for almost 25 years. I am a Canadian attorney by background, and joined Wilshire about 12 years ago when I moved into the LA area from Canada. I started as General Counsel, which was a lofty title for what the role was at the time. It was me. And then over the course of the last 12 years, I have expanded the role, kind of brought a more defined organizational structure to the legal and compliance team. So we have approximately 10 legal and compliance professionals. Prior to our purchase a month ago, I also oversaw HR and administration, but in our new world, things have shifted slightly. So I'm back to being a pure legal and compliance attorney. And so I've been here for 12 years, and hopefully there will be 12 more.
Absolutely. Okay, that's a long time, by the way, to be in one place.
It is.
Yes, I know. I've only been to two places, and one was over 13 years, and now I'm going on 7, I think even 8 years in my current firm. It's unbelievable how time flies, but how enmeshed you get in what you do when you're at a place for a very long time.
Well, and considering how long you've been, I mean, you're only like, what, 27 or 28?
I am, yeah. I'm 29, but who's counting?
Got it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so getting back to Wilshire. Wilshire has over 1.1 trillion in assets under advisory and over 75 billion in assets under management. Those are just staggering numbers. What takes up most of your time? What's the day in the life of the general counsel at a firm of that size? What does it look like?
Sure. So I'm actually very excited to report that I think we're now over 80 some billion in assets under management. So just in the time that, when the bio was put together, our assets have changed. So that's pretty exciting for us. We continue to grow. So as general counsel for a firm our size, my day is very varied, and like most of us, things have kind of changed pre-COVID and post-COVID. So most of my day is spent on Zoom calls with my colleagues and team members and other folks in the organization, talking and dealing with various issues. We have regular check-ins and meetings. It's and the days are varied. Some days it's about product development. Some days it's about regulatory issues. Some days it's about planning organizational structure rechanges. Right now, my day has been very focused on, as you mentioned, or as I think we mentioned, we just got bought out in January. And so our deal closed just a couple of months ago. And so we're just settling into kind of the new structure. And a lot of my time is figuring out how things look under the new regime.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That was actually going to be one of my next questions. So we'll just jump into it right now. You have this new team that you're working with, which means that you are integrating multiple cultures and philosophies and personalities. And I think that comes with it challenges. So I know this is in the nascent phase, but can you talk a little bit about how that's gone for you so far and how you've handled this in your position as head of legal?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I think I've been at Wilshire 12 years, and I celebrated my 12th anniversary just 4 days after our deal closed. And we've got a lot of new C people. So we've got a new CEO, a new CFO, a new CTO. I almost feel like a technology company with all the C people that we have. And so I have a new boss. His name's Mark Makepeace. He's in London. And even though they speak English, culturally, as you well know, things are very, very different. And I've approached this by looking at it like I've got a new job, not because I've been with Wilshire 12 years. And so candidly, you kind of get comfortable after 12 years. But for me, I've tried to look at this as I have a new job, I have a new boss. I kind of need to put everything else aside and treat this like a new opportunity. And that's been, it's kind of fun, but it's also a bit challenging at times too, because, you get used to things, you get comfortable, and change is something that, after 12 years in a job, you wouldn't necessarily expect. So maybe we'll have this conversation a year from now and I'll have a lot more to report for you.
Yeah, you definitely will. I know this from firsthand experience. I remember leaving my prior firm and joining my current firm. And it's not necessarily that what you're doing is so different. It's that you are working with people who do things differently. So it's a lot of that. Just how can you be respectful of the way, the approach that maybe someone else might take? And even though you'll get to the same result, it may not be, the process may look a little bit different. And you can learn a lot from talking to new people and thinking about how to integrate new personalities and concepts. Actually, this kind of brings me to my next question to you, because I really am curious. There's been a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion matters these days. And I'm just curious, now that you have this newly integrated team, how do you think about diversity and inclusion within maybe your own team or your own company? And maybe even discuss this in light of asset allocation.
Sure, I would love to, because this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure to yours as well. So we have one of the largest consulting practices in the US. We consult to many, many large pension plans. So we are very uniquely positioned. We're a gatekeeper for a lot of assets. So our ability to kind of provide exposure to diverse and emerging managers is pretty significant. And if you look at the statistics today, the number of firms that are owned by women and minorities is, do you have any idea what that number is? Like, what would you guess? So it's less than 10%. It's about 9%. And then when you look at actually the assets that are managed, we're talking about less than 2%. So think about it. These are crazy kind of numbers. And I would say that in most of our opinions, women are equally as capable as to running money as men are. You said it, I didn't. I might agree with you quite wholeheartedly. So, but so we at Wilshire take this responsibility very seriously. And so we've been attacking this in a number of different ways. And the first thing we're doing is awareness. So we are, where we can, where our clients don't object, we bring diverse owned managers to our clients when they're looking for managers as part of a search process. So we will make a concerted effort to have a diverse manager in every search that we do. And that's incredible exposure for managers and has been quite effective. The other thing that we're doing is outreach. And so it is challenging for people to understand, for some managers to understand how to work with consultants, what consultants are looking for, and to know how to excel. And so we have created outreach programs to diverse and emerging managers. So we will run seminars that are focused on them. We will have, and as part of those seminars, we'll also have breakout sessions where we do one-on-ones with emerging managers and our consultants, where they can ask questions and get feedback on how they're doing. And that's been incredibly, incredibly helpful. Unfortunately, kind of through this COVID period, we haven't been able to do that in person. We're still trying to do as much as we can online, but it's definitely not as effective as it has been.
Do you have a sense for some of the common pitfalls that managers face? Is that something that you focus on? I'm assuming that a lot of people come through your doors and you have an opportunity to see a wide variety of different kind of personalities and how people approach their pitch. Anything that you could maybe give a shout out to a manager, what they did well or what maybe they could improve upon and what you see?
Well, I'm not generally personally involved in the pitches, but I definitely hear about what the positives and the negatives are. And at its simplest level, it's about the most basic things: being prepared, knowing your story, and having a story. So you don't want to be, as a manager, you have to decide what your focus is going to be, and don't try and be all things to all people. Once you know what you're good at and your strength is, stick to it, focus on it, and be open and receptive to the feedback that you might get from a consultant or from a potential client. Because we will, if a manager asks us, well, why didn't I get scored higher on this? Or why was I not successful for this search? We will have a candid conversation with that manager about our thinking and our reasoning. We will share our evaluations with managers, but some managers don't even ask for them.
That's really astounding. I'm surprised to hear that. It's funny because you and I are kind of sitting in this regard in a little bit of a similar role. I have to provide a lot of feedback to my clients, and I'm on their side. It's not an adversarial relationship. I'm trying to get them, we're meeting a common goal here where everyone's trying to get their product launched or improve upon it or make sure that they're within the four corners of the law, or that they're on the more conservative side of a particular matter. And obviously not to raise regulatory concerns. But it's interesting how some managers will handle that. Some are very receptive to that conversation, and others take a little bit different approach, and it's a little bit more difficult to have those conversations. But I would imagine you're kind of seated in the same position. You're there to help them and maybe give them feedback that is positive, that will help to rejigger their approach a little bit and make their pitch just a little bit more refined. It's not that you're trying to be negative, you're trying to be constructive.
Exactly. But it's not like, there's any egos in the investment management industry. So no. So, we don't have to worry about that at all. But all joking aside, we have to be sensitive to the fact that, especially when you think about emerging and diverse managers, these small companies, this is their baby. This is, the thing that they've dreamed about for many years, about launching this organization or launching this strategy. And so we have to be sensitive to that as well. So we have to make sure our feedback is positive and constructive and not just, you're doing this wrong. And we really try hard to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the name of the game, trying to be constructive and help someone move forward, as opposed to being a little bit more negative and not really knowing, a manager not knowing what to do with that kind of feedback. I wanted to ask you a question, actually. It's kind of along the lines of this diversity and inclusion, but it's pivoting a teeny little bit. Your firm recently partnered with Hypatia Capital to launch a new index that is called the Hypatia Women's Hedge Fund Index. And it's been designed to measure the performance of women managed hedge funds that meet certain criteria. And I just think that this is a tremendously innovative product. And I'm wondering if you can talk about it a little bit further. What are some of the drivers behind this gender-based index? And if you think that there's a need to focus on gender equality in portfolio construction.
So first of all, thank you so much for asking about this, because we were so excited about this product. I think in particular, the women at Wilshire were very excited about this product. And we were thrilled to be asked by Hypatia to partner with them. So as you said, it's designed by Hypatia Capital Management, and it measures the performance of investable hedge funds that are managed by women. So it's specifically designed to screen based on female management as opposed to ownership or other types of factors that, you know, folks are often looking at in this space. So they specifically focus on sponsoring female CEOs, and their stated goal is to increase the percentage of hedge fund AUM that is managed by women. And one of the big challenges that we often face is data, and not being able to demonstrate that women are capable or more capable than men at managing assets. And so Hypatia came to the table and they said, in order to be able to improve the amount of assets going into the space, we need to be able to measure how women are doing. And they said, we need to be able to demonstrate that women are equally, if not more capable of doing this. So this index is designed specifically to demonstrate how successful women are being at managing hedge funds. And I will say, in the short time that this product has been launched, or this index has been launched, the reception has been incredible. We've done a lot of launches of indexes in our time, and this is probably the most receptive that we've seen to a product. And we hope, and they hope, that they're going to become the leading index in this space. And so, as I said, if we have this conversation a year from now, I'm hoping that this index will be off and running and will be incredibly successful.
Are your clients focused on this? Do you have a lot of interest about women managed products? So yes, our clients are very focused on women products and diverse products generally. But that's being said, there's definitely differentiators in terms of clients. So if you look at public plans today, Shelley, I know you have a lot of public clients as well. Public plans are incredibly focused on diversity and diversity inclusion initiatives. And so they are absolutely leading the charge. There are definitely some corporate pension plans that are also interested in diversity and inclusion, but they're probably a little bit behind where public plans are. And the one thing that I will say is that, you know, Wilshire is a gatekeeper. We can do a lot from an exposure perspective. We can do a lot from a training perspective. But at the end of the day, it's the people with the money, the asset owners. So the plans, those are the ones that are going to have to demonstrate that this is important and that it's a focus for them. So that is what I would encourage people to do. If this is important to you, then you need to put your money where your mouth is. Are you seeing, I know you have clients and this is the space that you work in as well. How important is it in your client base? Oh, everyone asks about it. I see it on both sides, because you're right. We do have this large group of investors and allocators that we manage, and they all want access. And the problem isn't that they want it. The problem is finding it in the right way and meeting the right people. So I'm not typically involved at that level, but because I'm behind the scenes and I'm speaking with my investor clients all the time, I'm in a position to know that this is a huge focus for them. And it's just a matter of finding the right groups and being able to meet with those people and have exposure. Actually, conferences like iConnections, I know that this is all virtual right now, but being able to put all of these people in a room together is really helpful. And I've attended a bunch of these type of conferences in my lifetime. And I know that when you can meet one after another and really have all of these people kind of at your forefront right in one fell swoop, so you can do it in a couple of days, it makes it a lot easier. I think this year has probably pose some challenges in that regard because we can't meet face to face. And I think some of those restrictions are easing and people are feeling a little bit more confident and comfortable. So with an index like yours, the Hypatia Index, and also the ability to maybe branch out and meet people more in person, is going to probably, we'll hit a different hurdle down the road. And I think we're going to see more access to not just women, but more diverse managers in general.
Well, and there's also a bit of a chicken and egg too, right? Because when you think about one of the big drivers behind large pension plans is they don't want to be 50% of your assets. They can't be, that there's too much risk associated with that lack of diversity from a particular asset. And so until you have sufficient assets, it's hard to get exposure. But how do you get exposure? And so some of the programs that some of the plans have launched, like these diverse manager programs, where they specifically designate assets, even if they're smaller amounts, to go to diverse and emerging firms, can be really, really successful in getting the exposure and getting people with that start so that they can leverage off of that success and go from there.
Yes, actually, just and as a general matter, I will say this has nothing to do with diversity and inclusion, nothing to do with women, but we have seen a lot of more institutional investors willing to make bets on emerging managers and putting money with some of those emerging managers at an earlier phase than they otherwise maybe would have considered in prior years, which I think is really encouraging because, we need innovation.
Yeah.
And emerging managers provide a lot of that. I wanted to ask you another question. It's kind of along these lines, but a little bit different. Because your firm is so large and you see a lot of strategies, you see a lot of different types of managers, you see a lot of different types of strategies, you must see a lot of cutting edge strategies or interest in cutting edge strategies like cannabis focus investments or crypto investments, even artificial intelligence. And I think with that comes some maybe risk or considerations on the legal front. And I was just wondering if there were any challenges that you faced in that regard, or if you think about this, or if you even have this as an issue.
I'm just so grateful that you're not asking me about blockchain, because I have I still have no idea what that is. I'm just going to go on record.
Okay.
So
talk about that offline. I can have a conversation with you. Very high level.
I would appreciate that, because somebody needs to teach me about blockchain. So, Shelley, in a firm like Wilshire, where we see a lot of stuff, the reality is we don't treat it any differently than we do any other type of strategy, whether it's a cannabis strategy or crypto strategy or some, super new cool quant strategy. We approach it in the same way. And from a legal perspective, we probably also approach it in the same way. We have to do our analysis, of the rules of the structure, just like any other type of product. It's like, I don't know if you've ever had this conversation with somebody who says they're an entertainment lawyer. And when somebody tells me that they're an entertainment lawyer, I think to myself, so basically you're a contractor or corporate lawyer, but you just happen to be in this industry. So at the end of it, we're investment professionals. So we're evaluating all types of investments. Whether they are unique and new and different or somewhat plain vanilla, our approach is the same. And that's one of the benefits of bringing somebody like a Wilshire to the table, is that we have a disciplined approach. And so we're not just kind of chasing a new strategy. We approach every new strategy with the same discipline that we approach everything we evaluate.
Can I turn for another minute? I just want to go in one other direction, because I want to make sure that I ask this question of you. There aren't that many women in your role in our industry. And I was wondering if you had any advice that you could give to women who are maybe earlier in their career and who are perhaps aspiring to be in a position such as yours.
Well, I will say, first of all, that I feel like within the legal industry, Shelley, we're probably better positioned than our peers in pure financial services, right? I mean, you're a partner at a major law firm, and I definitely see a lot more women in the legal profession at the top, at the very top levels than I have seen in the asset management industry more generally. That's not to say that we don't have challenges, because absolutely there is definitely room to grow. So for me, there are so many different things that I could talk about in terms of kind of how to get there. But one thing I will say is that spending a few years, even if you want to go in a house, spending a few years in a law firm is an incredible grounding. You just get such great training at a law firm. And unless you go to a massive corporation with a large legal department, you're just not going to get that.
Mhm.
And then the other thing to remember is that if you want to go in-house, the most important thing is to be a business lawyer, or be a business person. So almost take the word lawyer out of your vocabulary and take the word no out of your vocabulary. You pointed out, Shelley, earlier that your job is to help your clients get what they want to get done.
Mhm.
And in-house counsel, your role is really not that different. And if you are the person that's saying no all the time, you're not going to be brought to the table, and you're not going to be seen as a trusted advisor. And so learning how to frame your communication and work with your business partners as true partners is really, really important. Any attorney or anybody that's ever worked as part of one of my teams over the past almost 25 years will tell you that a required reading for my group is something called the Reebok Rules. Have you ever read the Reebok Rules?
No.
You should make it required reading for associates too, because it's not just helpful to lawyers who are working in-house. It's also helpful for lawyers in private practice to understand how in-house lawyers are thinking.
Okay.
And so this attorney, and these Reebok rules were published in the 90s. And to me, they are just as relevant today. And they're kind of like my cheat sheet. They're what I come back to when I'm struggling with how to deal with an issue or trying to get my head in the right space. And there are just a couple of things that have always resonated with me in the Reebok rules about taking the word no out of your vocabulary, about not being afraid to take on, tasks that are new and different, and about, remembering what the core function of your job is, which is to help the business succeed at what it's trying to do. And that's been really, really important.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I was a younger lawyer, I think that this kind of applies. This is not about being a lawyer. This is something that applies in general. I remember sitting in a meeting one time with a group of partners and me, and they were all talking about how we needed to revise a document and what we were going to draft and how it was going to go down. And I sat there as they were having this conversation, taking notes furiously. And in the end, I had no idea when they stood up and said, okay, we're done. Everyone got it? Good. Shelley, you're going to do that? I had no idea what I was supposed to do. None, literally none. It didn't make any sense after I had gone through these notes and listened to their conversation. And I remember thinking, if I do not take care of this right now and nip this in the bud, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be sitting there staring at a blank screen, not knowing what I'm supposed to do, what the focus is. And I just had this epiphany. I have got to stop this right now. And I did. I said, excuse me, I'm really sorry, but is it possible that we just run through this one more time? I'm not really clear what my instruction is. I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. And in the end, it turned out that none of them did either. It was just, everyone was kind of spitballing what they wanted or what they thought that we should do, but it didn't make sense in the end how we were supposed to actually put that down on paper. And it was a real lesson to me that you always have to speak up and not be afraid of speaking up, because everything that you learn or everything that you do builds on one another. And just like you said, going into a law firm, if you're a lawyer, going into a law firm earlier in your career is great, because these are all building blocks. So you need to have the opportunity to learn how to draft a contract, when to use defined terms, when to cross-reference. And those are just basics. And you get that when you're at a law firm. But when you jump to in-house, all of a sudden, you better have all of those building blocks. And then you better be able to pivot, because I focus on private investment funds and regulatory matters that come up in that universe. And that's my area of expertise. And I've been doing it for 20 years. But I'm not an employment lawyer. I'm not a real estate lawyer. I'm not a broker dealer lawyer. I mean, I know enough to know bits about all of these pieces, but I'm not a generalist, except you are sitting in house and you are kind of in a way, you need to know a little bit about all of these things.
Mhm.
So how do you make decisions when to deal with something on your own or deal with your own legal team, and when to use outside counsel and seek outside advice?
It's a great question. And I actually want to make a comment on something before I answer your question. I want to make a comment on something you said. You know, I talk to a lot of lawyers that are interested in going in-house, and whether they're interested in coming to work for Wilshire or just going in-house generally. And one of the things that I will caution young lawyers about is when to go in-house. Think about when you want to go in-house, and also think about where you go in-house, because going in-house, between 3 and 5 years into your career is not a bad thing, especially if that's where you want to go. But if you go in-house and you're the only lawyer, the first lawyer for a small company, you are setting yourself up for a very challenging situation. And when you're a young lawyer, whether you're in-house or in private practice, you need mentors, you need guidance, and you need somebody to tell you when you're doing well, and when you've got something to learn. And so that's just one of the things that I've spoken to some young lawyers who've gotten out of law school and are struggling to find their first job and get an opportunity to go in-house. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not, but it's just something to think about. Because to your point, Shelley, the skill that you develop over time, and that doesn't just come naturally on day one, is understanding the risk profile of the organization and understanding the risk profile of the things that are being brought to you. Because as you said, I'm a generalist in-house. I'm a jack of all trades and probably a master of none. But
no.
But what I'm really good at, I think, is issue spotting.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to evaluate the risk of a particular situation. And so over time, you need to try and develop that skill as a lawyer, especially as an in-house lawyer. You need to be able to say, well, okay, there's an issue here. What is the issue? Is it high risk? Is it low risk? If it's low risk, even if I'm not entirely sure on it, do I really need to go to external counsel and ask? Because at worst, what's the downside? How much time do I need to spend on the matter? And so you kind of develop your own approach to risk analysis over time. I know I have. Most in-house lawyers at a senior level have also done that. And then they know when to be able to bring something to external counsel, or when they can simply deal with it, in-house. And the other thing that I will say, and this probably goes more for women than for men, because we are, as women, often not as confident. Speak confidently. Sometimes, even if you're not entirely sure, at some point you just have to own your messaging and own your voice, and being able to speak with confidence. Because when we were talking about that situation, all of the guys just got up and walked out of that room with confidence. They're like, we're done. And then you came back and you realized they had absolutely no idea what they were talking about. So speaking with confidence and being able to be confident in what you're doing is a really important skill to learn. And for some people, it comes naturally. And if it doesn't, it's something that you should learn.
Yes. And not being afraid to ask questions. It's perfectly acceptable. I tell the associates in my group all the time, there are no dumb questions. I don't know what you know and don't know, because I've been doing this for too long. So I'm not really qualified to say at year 2 or 3 that you should already know this. I don't know what you should know. I want you to ask me the questions because I want you to learn. I want you to show me that you're thinking about this at a critical level. And then we can have a conversation. And then if over time you're asking me the same questions over and over again, okay, well then maybe that's problematic. But let's just start with the premise that there are no dumb questions. And you probably do have a reasonable question to ask at any level. So just ask it. Don't be afraid. And that comes with confidence.
And the one add-on that I will have to that, though, is do your work, do at least some work before you ask the question. So think about the issue, think about what the question is. It's not like, Shelley, come and spoon feed me the answer. It should be, Shelley, I've thought about this, this, and this, and I still have these questions. Am I looking at this the right way? Am I on the right track? Those types of things. But sometimes when somebody comes to me with a question, I agree, it's not a dumb question, but have you looked at these things before you've asked me the question? Or are you just hoping that I'll give you the answer? So there's a little bit of both.
You're absolutely right. That is a very good point. I wanted to also ask you before we end about some of the issues that you faced during the pandemic. Have there been business continuity issues? I assume that there's probably just, forget business continuity even, just issues with being remote and connecting with people on a regular basis. Can you talk to me about some of that, with maybe not even just legal, but in general within your organization?
Sure. So our organization prior to the pandemic, and we're coming up on the anniversary of when we went home, right? It's like next week or something, which is crazy when you think about it. How long were you going home for? Because I was going home for 2 weeks.
I thought that maybe I'd be back in the office I thought maybe like early April I'd be back. So I was spot on, obviously. Early April, and we're going on a year.
Yep, I know. So before this pandemic, we were a very old-fashioned type of organization. So if you weren't traveling, you were in the office. We didn't have an approved telecommuting policy. We wore suits and ties, business, not just business casual, but business every day. And I don't think I've taken my yoga pants off in 300 days. So
Me neither, including right now.
You can't see it, but that's what's going on. But we were kind of amazed with how quickly and how easily we transitioned out of the office. It was incredibly smooth and has continued to be smooth. But one of the things that I will say is I'm finding that people are getting their jobs done, and they're getting their jobs done in a reasonable fashion. But there are a couple of different struggles. One is the line between work and personal is getting increasingly blurred. And especially for those people who don't have a dedicated space at home, and people are telling me that they're working even harder than they've worked than before the pandemic. And, that is challenging, but and eventually I think that changes, and that's great. But the other thing that has been very challenging is connectivity. And so have you onboarded any new associates during the pandemic?
Oh my God, tons. We've onboarded tons of associates, tons of lateral partners. It's been unbelievable how many people have joined our firm.
Yeah. And so we've had we've had many people across the firm, but just in my smaller group, we've had 3 new hires in the last year. And connectivity has been hard, and trying to get them to feel like part of the team and feel like they have the support that they need has been pretty challenging. So we had initially, when this started, we had daily Zoom team check-ins. I'm not kidding, daily Zoom team check-ins. And
were you allowed to be off video?
Nope. It was short, half an hour, but you need to be on video and you need to be engaged. And this was at the time my smaller group, so it was like 10 or 11 people, so not the broader group. And we've at this point in time, we're down to about 2 or 3 times a week, most often 2, sometimes 3, depending on what's going on. And over various points in the year, people complained about it. They're like, oh, not another Zoom meeting. But what I found is that sometimes those minutes are 5 minutes, those meetings are 5 minutes, and sometimes they're 50 minutes. Mm-hmm. And what I've learned is having the check-in on the calendar is really important. It gives that kind of continuity and connectivity, but being able to acknowledge that today is just not the day when people want to talk to each other, or they have other things to do, and just saying, okay, we're going to wrap it up really quickly, has been super, super helpful. So trying to kind of read the audience in that way.
Mhm.
And just also understanding that each member of your team is different. They all need different things. Some of them some people are struggling with the kids at home and trying to homeschool them. Other people are dealing with, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment with my spouse or my partner, and I'm going to kill him or her. So, just those types of things. But overall, Shelley, I mean, we've been incredibly lucky. We closed a sale of the company during the pandemic.
Yep. We did.
So I think we've been pretty successful overall.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about this time period is the new people. And it's not hard for me, it's hard for them because they don't have the benefit of the face-to-face interaction that you normally would get when you can pop into someone's office and get to know them for 10 or 15 minutes, talk to them about a matter, leave, and then have someone else come in and have that conversation and just be able to have face-to-face interaction. I think that has been a real challenge for the younger set, as well as for our lateral partners and people who are trying to integrate a practice. I mean, doing it through this forum it's difficult. It's really difficult. And you lose a lot when you're not face to face. I mean, this is great. We're having this conversation and it's been very simple and fluid, but we know each other and we're comfortable with each other. But if you were meeting someone and learning about someone for the very first time, that would be really hard for them to understand your little picadillos and how you make jokes and am I offending someone, and just the ease at which face-to-face interaction can just take the edge off for someone and make them feel more comfortable. So I think that you're right what you're saying, and that it's just being sensitive, and sometimes it's not everyone's best day.
And also for younger people too, the informal interactions that you get from being in the office, like the water cooler conversation, or just I'm having a meeting and I'm like, hey, why don't you just sit in on this and listen in? That just doesn't happen in this remote world. And so I feel like our more junior people are missing out on some of that. And I hope that we can get back to a place where I don't want to get back into the office. Candidly, I'll go on record. I do not want to be in the office 5 days a week ever again. I want more flexibility. So if my boss is listening, I would like more flexibility going forward. But I do want to be in the office, and I do want to have, that connectivity, not just for myself, but for my team. I think it's incredibly important, and I think that we all will benefit from it.
I totally agree with you. So, Reena, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your candor, and the conversation was really fantastic. So I really appreciate all of your time, and thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Shelley, and thank you for having me, and thank you for making this so easy. Sometimes you do these things and they're like a little awkward, but you and I know each other, and I thought this was fun. I'm looking forward to hopefully doing it one day live, and then you owe me a drink.
I owe you a drink. That's done. Easy.
All right.
Thanks,
everyone.
Take care.